Dear students, parents, teachers and principals, it's a pleasure to have all of you on the Flashcardz platform. We have with us two very special people, Niharika Bhatt from the 2015 IPS cadre and Himanshu Sagar from the 2018 IFS cadre. Before we begin, I'll introduce Flashcardz. We are an edutech company whose business is to make life simple and easier for children from the age group of 13 to 16, where the real struggles begin. We are a self-testing platform for the CBSE and ICC children where the students can test themselves to evaluate their preparedness for exams 8th, 9th and 10th and their boards. The system gives immediate feedback with marks so that the student knows where she stands. You can try out the platform for free at www.flashcards.co.in. Flashcards has a Z in it. I am Suniti Kulkarni and my co-host is Nitin Kulkarni. We are the co-founders of Flashcardz. Coming back to our Flashcardz career series, the series is to throw light on different career options. Most students don't know what they want to do and where they want to be when they're in the 9th or 10th standard. There are some who are absolutely sure. Some are sure because they just don't like certain subjects or are not good at it. So the choices are pretty clear for them. Some are generally good at everything and therefore confused at what they want. So when you are at the threshold of 10th and 11th, you will make a wiser decision to pick a stream that will help you select a career path best for you by watching a career series, by Googling, by talking to your peers, talking to the relevant people and making the wisest decision for yourself. Over to you, Nitin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here with us. I'm really excited with today's panelists. I have met a lot of people from the civil services, but never too this young. So these are the future of our country. These are the people who are actually taking us into the promised land with some wonderful stuff that they do to keep things organized, to develop things, and so on. So let me introduce the two of them. Niharika Bhatt is an officer in the Indian Police Service, better known as the IPS. She did her BTech from the Institute of Engineering and Technology, Lucknow, and an MS from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. She got into the Indian Police Service in the year 2015 and is born to the AGMUT cadre. Niharika has worked as ASP Dehradun, ASP Chandigarh, SP Chandigarh, SP Traffic Pondicherry, and SSP Karaikal District. So great to have Niharika with us today. Our second panelist today is Himanshu Sagar. Himanshu is an officer in the Indian Foreign Service. He did his BTech from IIT Kanpur in electrical engineering and then an MBA from IIM Bangalore, after which he worked for the American Express. He got into the Indian Foreign Service in 2018. He was stationed in Yangon, Myanmar from 2019 to 2021 for his language training, and now he is posted as Undersecretary in the Bangladesh Myanmar Division in the Ministry of External Affairs. Niharika is currently based in Port Blair, and Himanshu is currently based in Delhi. So welcome to both of you. And without further ado, I am going to get the show on the road and start our Q&A. So just for the information of everyone who is present here, this is sort of an interview format. I'm going to ask very specific questions to Himanshu and Niharika, and they are going to tell us their perspectives on those. And in the end, we have set aside some time for you to ask questions. So please write down your questions and we will open the chat window after the main part of the webinar is done, and you can type out your questions and we will take as many questions as we possibly can. So Niharika, the first question to you. And I want to get started by just saying that civil services has always been a very exciting career option, always been. It's one of those that people really, covet. So what we would like you to do to get the ball rolling is just talk about the opportunity landscape. What are the different kinds of opportunities available in this space? Just if you can briefly describe that.
Right. Thank you for the kind introduction. Um, Civil services we are inducted through an exam conducted by the Union Public Service Commission. And through this single exam, there are around 25 services in which we can get recruited. Three of them are All India services, which are Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police, and Indian Forest Service. Uh, by All India service, I mean that we get allotted to different cadres and we can go to any of the states across the country. Then we have around 15 services which are called the Group A services, in which different services of the railways, information services, corporate law services, postal services are included. So some 15 odd services are under the Group A services. And then the Group B services, which are Delhi and other union territories, civil services, Pondicherry civil services, Pondicherry police services. So we get these services allocated depending on our rank as well as our preference, which we have to fill in the order of preference while appearing for the exam. So this is a general broad landscape of the services available to us for recruitment through this exam.
Okay, great. And some of those I have heard of, some of those I wasn't aware of, so that's pretty helpful. Himanshu, do you want to add anything to what Niharika just spoke about in terms of the opportunity landscape?
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Nitin, for having us here today. And I also thank Praniti and Niharika ma'am for joining.
So, Himanshu, your volume is a little bit low. If you can get the mic a little bit closer, that will be helpful.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Much better.
Okay, sure. So I just want to thank you, Nitin and Suniti, for having this session today. And I also thank Niharika ma'am for joining us today. It's a wonderful opportunity to speak to some of the young and brilliant minds and also their parents. So coming back to the question on the landscape which is provided by the civil services. So as ma'am Niharika ma'am pointed out that we get into 25 out around 25 different services through the single exam. And most of the people who are inducted through the civil services exam, they later on in their career, they are the ones who form the administrative backbone of different ministries. So all the government of India machinery is mostly at the higher levels manned by people who are inducted through the UPSC civil services exam. So as a career option, this is both very attractive and very fulfilling. And I am yet to come across anyone who has said that he has not enjoyed his tenure in the civil services. So that's what I just wanted to add to what Niharika ma'am said. She has already laid out how a system of civil services exam works. Thank you.
Yeah, and in fact, we hear about very senior police officers around the country. And Niharika, when I was talking to her earlier, had shared with me that the number of women in the IPS now has increased substantially compared to what it was earlier. We look at the IFS. So our current foreign minister, Mr. Jaishankar, is an ex IFS officer. You can see him in the news, very articulate, knows. Okay, so one quick clarification on this career landscape for you, Himanshu. Can you join the Indian? Is there something called Indian Diplomat Services, which is different from the IFS, or that is all part of the IFS?
Okay. To answer your question, Nitin, so there is nothing called the Indian Diplomat Service. It's essentially our Ministry of External Affairs. So they man all the stations, what we called as our missions. So these are basically our embassies or our consulates. So essentially, these are manned by people who are inducted either through UPSC exam and later who are inducted into the Indian Foreign Service, or there's a different feeder cadre which we called IFSB. So these are inducted through a different exam called SSB. So these are mostly people who would be in the administrative wings of different embassies as posted as assistant section officers or section officers in the ministry.
Okay.
So there is nothing called Indian Diplomat Service. It's just Indian Foreign Service and
Indian Foreign Service, A and B. So A is the senior officials and part B, but B is for the other people who man the missions, etc. Okay.
Correct.
Brilliant. Thank you. So let's go back to you, Himanshu, for my next question. And my next question is really about, put a little more flesh around your job and tell us, what does a typical day in your life, in the office life, look like?
Yes. So very interesting question again, Nitin. And I'm sure my day would be different from a day in, let's say, Niharika ma'am's work life, from someone who is in the Indian Administrative Services. That said, even in our Indian Foreign Service, the day differs depending on whether you are posted abroad or if you are in India. So I'll give you example of both the situations. So let's say I am posted abroad. I'll draw an example from Yangon. So my typical day started in the morning with reporting to our mission head, who is the ambassador. And there would be very typical routine works which are follow over from previous day or week, and we have to provide an update on that. Then as we move on towards the middle part of the day, is where we, kind of move into more of the policy implementation part. So all our, for example, the projects that the government of India is doing abroad, or our political engagements with the different countries. So these are the matters which are then discussed during the daytime. And even after, let's say, 4 or 5, so that is when we start to wrap up our work, and we make sure that all urgent things which are there are disposed of. And once the official hours are over, that if you are posted abroad, then you might be invited to some diplomatic gathering or some celebration which is organized by some other embassy, or in general if you want to meet other people from diplomatic community. So it's very busy and hectic day usually for us from Monday to Friday, and weekends are mostly up to your interest, like whatever you want to do, you can pursue that. And when you are posted in the ministry, the day is very different in a sense that here you do not directly interact with people from other countries. So here your role is more of a liaison. So where you act as a connecting point between our embassies and different ministries who are there in Delhi for implementation of the projects and policies which have been laid out by Government of India. So let me not confuse our audience very much. I'll just take a simple example of what a policy would look like. So for example, we provide a lot of assistance to our neighboring countries in particular. So there are many projects which we are implementing in Myanmar. We are building a Kaladan multimodal project, which some of us might have heard of. So it's this basically we are building a ship, we are building a port, we are building a road, and it will connect to our northeast part of the country. So these are the kind of policy decisions which we have taken, and now for its implementation is the role of the desk officer. So I am the desk officer for Myanmar here. So these kind of projects would be pushed by me. And also I have to liaison with different ministries. So whenever some project is going on, for example, if some road is being built, then you have to talk to Ministry of Roadways, then you have to talk to, if some railway line is building, then you have to talk to Ministry of Railways. So this kind of work we are required to do in a day-to-day environment. So
Very interesting. Very interesting. So officers in their 20s are running or at least looking after these huge projects in other countries, liaising with. I mean, what an experience! Amazing. Niharika, over to you. An IPS, a day in the life of an IPS officer has to be exciting.
Yes, it is indeed exciting. And first off, I would start with that no 2 days are similar. So I'll just give a rough template of what it can look like. So, as a junior officer, when we start, we are ASP. So, in a district, the district is divided into small subdivisions, sub districts. So, we are in charge of that. And 4 5 years into career, we start heading the districts. So, the main idea is that all the crime or any unlawful activity that happens in the district is the responsibility of the IPS officer who's posted there. So our day usually starts off with that. In the morning, we go to the office. Any directions or any communication that we get from senior officers or from other departments, it comes to our office. We go through that and give necessary directions for necessary compliance. A lot of petitions and complaints come from the people who write to us about problems that they are facing or grievances that they have. So that have to be looked into. Then if there has been any major crime in the district or the subdivision, then we visit the spot, see what the issue is, how the evidence is available and how that needs to be collected. We give necessary directions and guidance to the investigating officers who are junior to us. If there is a law and order, lots of protests and dharnas happen around the country on any given day. So if there is anything major, then we as officers visit this spot for that also, to make sure that the duty deployment is in place. And then definitely 2 3 hours of the day is for public dealing. That's when we just are available in our office, and anyone for the public can come and speak to us about a pending petition, an FIR that has been registered, any case under investigation, or any grievance or anything they have that needs our attention. So this public dealing is a major part of our day. So that is our typical day, but it can vary from sometimes there's a sensational case, so we just get involved in that. So the entire day changes according to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Niharika.
Yeah.
So, Niharika, next question goes to you. And
Yeah.
what I want to know is, at what point in your life, because now we are taking you back to the time when you were in 8th and 9th and 10th, and did you think about this profession at that time and plan for it all the way, or did that happen later? We just want to pick your mind on how you made this decision. How did you come to get into this profession?
That's a very interesting question, especially in my case, because I decided to appear for civil services after I was done with my master's degree and I was working. Like you mentioned in the introduction, I did my master's from Michigan, and then I was working as a researcher in Washington DC. Then civil services happened because while working as a researcher, there was something at the back of my mind that it's a very monotonous job that I'm doing. I'm just working on a small part of science. And looking at civil services, I realized that at the age of 20, this is one job that will let me have a very huge impact on society. I'm an IPS officer. Himanshu is a foreign services officer. And Himanshu also said, and I'm sure he'll agree with me, in our 20s, late 20s or early 30s, there is no other job probably that would give us the kind of uh, impact that will allow us to have the kind of impact that we are having on the society and the policies. So that was a major push for me. So I decided to appear for civil services much later in my life.
Okay, okay. So your really your career direction was very different. It was engineering, and you did your
Yeah.
masters, were a researcher. But somewhere, I'm sure you that seed was sown in your mind, and you took that very big decision to completely go in a different direction. Okay, okay,
Yes.
great. Himanshu, over to you. And how did you come to make this decision? Were there any role models that you pursued? Were there any other sort of influences? How did this happen for you?
Thank you. And so I would agree with Suniti when she pointed out at the start of the session that there are people who are, there are two kinds of people. So one who are absolutely sure that they want to do this in life. And then there are others who are not sure. Then there is a third category, which is good at everything, but they are also not sure. So I would place myself somewhere in the third category, that I was above average in most of the things, but I was not sure what I want to do in life. And so this is the point where, you know, influences from your peer group, from your parents, from your siblings, from your friends, teachers, that all starts coming in. So when I remember when I was in standard ninth and 10th, at that point of time, I used to just check with my peer groups. Okay, so what are you gonna do? Are you studying for engineering? Are you studying for medicine? So as it happened, my core group of friends, they were all preparing for IIT JEE. So I followed with them. I said, okay, you are doing, I'll also do, and we'll most likely land up in the same college and we'll have a good time. So that uh, 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 fortunately, I cleared the exam. Then I landed up in engineering. Then I realized, okay, this is good, but it is not what I want to do in long term. So then you start looking for some other better option. Then again, your influences from your peer group, from your professors, from your parents, and all. Again, it all comes in. And then since my core group now was preparing for MBA, I also started preparing for it, and I also got through. And it was all very good and very, I would say, fortunate for me that I was able to land into IIM Bangalore, and from there I landed into American Express, which was a very decent, good paying job with stability in career. uh, I was not at all dissatisfied with it, and I was, in fact, to be very frank, I was happy with the kind of work-life balance that was there, the kind of growth opportunities that were there at Amex. Uh, but then when I moved to Gurgaon, then I got in touch with some of my friends who were earlier preparing for UPSC during our undergraduation days. And through interactions with them, I got to know what kind of work they are doing. So one of my friends was in the Indian Foreign Service. He was posted in Vienna, and he told me about the different kind of work that the embassy is doing. And that really got me inclined towards the civil services and towards Indian Foreign Service in particular. So, it's the kind of multiple sources from where you get influenced, and you have to make a choice. And for me, it was very late in my career. I was already into the corporate sector for 5 years, but fortunately, everything worked out, and I landed up in foreign service. And looking back, I think this was the best decision which I could have made.
Wow, very, very interesting. In fact, two, three lessons that I can draw from the stories that both of you told. One is that even the brightest minds, I mean, we have two very bright minds in front of us. can be unsure about where they want to go in 8th, 9th, 10th, and that is okay. That is okay. So it's a time of exploration, and you basically figure out what you want to do and take the path that is available to you. And I think the second lesson that I can draw from you is that you are constantly keep your mind open, and you both of you did. And based on the new things that you were exposed to, you made that decision and got into civil services because that is where you felt your passion and you felt that you could make the biggest impact. So it's brilliant. I think those are pretty inspiring stories from my perspective, and that sort of leads me into the next question, and we will ask you first, Himanshu. um, you know so obviously you made this decision fair much later, but if you look in retrospect, and if there are some children, some students who say that, yeah, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do in 11, 12 standard and for graduation, what should be their subject choices if they are clear that they want to get into civil services? Does one choice or the is better than the others, etc.? In retrospect and looking at yourself and your colleague, what do you think? So Himanshu, you first, and then we go to Niharika.
So very interesting question again, and it's a very important one also, because a lot of people are confused if and what if they choose the subject, will that help in their UPSC preparation, or they should choose a different subject?
Yeah. So
Like,
Himanshu, if you don't mind, could you get the mic a little bit closer? Yeah. Thank you.
sorry,
Thank you.
sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting question, Nitin. And to answer you, I think the you have to understand what the Union Public Service Commission is looking for in a candidate. So they want you to not to be a specialist, but they want you to quickly grasp things. And for a quick indicator of that is how good you are in your undergraduation and how interested are you in that subject. So my advice would be, if you are really decided that you have to appear for the civil service exam and you have to get into the civil service, choose a subject in which you are interested in. It doesn't matter. It can be arts, it can be engineering, it can be medicine, because I have my batchmates spread across different streams. A lot of them are engineers, a lot of them are doctors, many of them are from humanities background. But one thing which is common is in most of the candidates, I would say that they are fond of their subject, and they have a mastery over it. And so, for example, we have people who have done masters in biochemistry. So it's a very specialized subject, and you might think that, oh, what does biochemistry have to do with civil service exam? Uh, so, so it might not be very apparent on the face of it, but the skills that you learn when you go through your undergraduation, the analytical skills, your personality, it all matures and develops through the undergraduation period. And if it is something which interests you, then your personality would be much better than if it is something which you are not interested in and you have just taken it for the sake of this exam. So that could be my 2 cents on this one, and maybe Niharika ma'am can add more to it.
Yeah, over to you, Niharika.
Yes, I agree with what Himanshu is saying, that having an interest in the subject is first and foremost, because why being in having interest in the subject and being a master of the subject is important is the syllabus of civil services exam is vast. So until and unless you really enjoy what you are studying, getting through this exam can be a little difficult, because you have to study a lot. So you have to actually enjoy the process. It's not just about the end. The process has to be very enjoyable for you. For that, you have to enjoy the subject you are studying and be a master of it. So for class 11th, 12th, as well as for graduation, going for a subject that interests you is very, very important. But along with that, one more criteria that I have is that you should always have a career backup along with this exam, because the exam is so strenuous and it's such a long process that if you don't have a career backup, it can become really, really stressful to be part of this examination process. So being interested in the subject and having a career backup when you decide to appear for this exam after your bachelor's are the two most important criteria as per me.
Okay, great. So subject choice is not as important as loving it and being very serious about it, being very serious about your studies, because the syllabus and requirements are vast. Okay, great. So Niharika, let's build on what you just said and talk about the preparation required. I mean, we all know that UPSC is by far the toughest exam in the country. The number of people taken is very small and the number of people who appear is very, very large. So tell us about at what stage someone who is interested in this should start preparing, and coaching classes and all of that stuff. So walk us through that process and some tips for youngsters.
Right. I think a good time to start is since having a bachelor's degree is a requirement to appear for the exam. So I think a good time to just kind of get into the groove of things is the final year of bachelor's, or right after you have finished the bachelor's degree. So going for coaching is again a personal preference. I did not go for coaching, but I joined a number of test series. So I would study on my own and then I would appear for test series, which would act like a feedback for me. If I'm not doing well in one of the subjects or one of the parts of the subject, then I would refocus my attention to it. So that is there. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything to add to that, Himanshu, from your experience, your perspective?
Yeah. You also have to keep in mind pattern and the the schedule of the exam. So this exam is conducted in three stages. So one is preliminary exam, then you have the main, and then you have interview. So I agree with Niharika ma'am that under graduation may be a great time to start the preparation. But I also feel that there are some components which you may actually start working on during your school time or just when you enter your undergraduation. So for example, this exam requires you to be very analytical in your approach. So this is something which you can pick up when you are in your school, and you have to be aware of what is going on in India and the world for this exam's purpose also, and also as a also for being a knowledgeable human being. So this is something again which you can start from any day you want to. And coming to the specifics of the exam, the syllabus and all that can be covered later as well. But if you start working on your personality, then later on that would be very good and advantageous for you, especially given that the weightage of interview is also very critical in the UPSC exam. And in the interview, your personality is tested, and personality cannot be built in a short time. So it's uh, some of the components, as I mentioned, you can start working on them as early as possible, and others you can take up when you are in undergraduation or even later.
So working on personality development, and analytical abilities, you mentioned. And also, I think one very interesting thing that you spoke about was general awareness about the world around you. Start developing the habit to be aware of what's going on in the world around you. What's happening in Russia, what's going on, what's India doing with Myanmar, and stuff like that, little things like that. If you work on things and keep yourself aware, And then also, as both of you pointed out, really get serious about the exam and syllabus sometime towards the end of your graduation and beyond, then that would be a good way to get ready for this really, really tough exam. Okay, great. It's a coincidence actually that we have both of you here from the engineering stream. How just a quick thought to not to anyone in particular, but how has that helped? Has that helped you in any way in your profession? That background? Any one of you?
Okay, I'll take this question. So being an engineer, it does help in times because there are a lot of technical things that keep coming up. For example, there's a lot of push of digital India in all aspects. For example, in policing, the traffic system is being computerized. There's a complete CCTV coverage of the districts that is being done, and a lot of petitions and all that I had mentioned earlier, e-office, that all the files, they will be available on computers, as well as the grievances can be addressed online. So in all of this, I felt that since I have a technical background, so it helps me, since all these computer processes are being done by external vendors or through the national informatics services. So it helps me collaborate with them on in a much easier manner, because I understand what are the technical difficulties or the roadblocks they might be facing, and understand their perspective as well. So that is an advantage that I feel that I've had.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So actually, and that probably will work with people from all streams. There will be
Yeah.
specific areas because your remit and your responsibilities are so widespread that there'll be something somewhere. Someone from sociology may have some advantage in working with certain types of people and so on. So I think the your passion for your subject really shines through, I suppose, in once you get into this. Okay, so let's move on to the last part of what I want to ask you before we open the forum for questions and answers. And we'll open the chat window very shortly. So as I mentioned before, please do note down your questions. And as soon as we open the chat window, you can type those in and we will take as many as we possibly can within the time we have available. So let me go to you, Himanshu, and ask you about, I think we sort of know the answer to that question, but we'd like to hear from the two of you. You know, can one make a good living doing this? And just talk to us about the quality of life you have. What are some really good things about it, and so on? And why should people consider it from that viewpoint also?
Yeah. Uh, Thank you, Nitin. To answer your question very shortly, I would say that the government takes good care of you, and it depends on your requirements, your responsibilities, and your service, and of course where you are posted. So I can speak on with reference to the Indian Foreign Service. So our salaries and our remuneration depends on where we are posted. So for example, if we are posted in Delhi, then it would be at par with other central services, other all India services. But when we are posted abroad, then you have to take into account the difficulties that are being faced, because first, you are in a different country. Second, a standard of living might be different. And third, the currency of that country can be maybe fluctuating or maybe stable. So there are a lot of concerns which are there while determining the remuneration of an IFS officer. So all these are well taken care by the government, and there's an index to which all our remunerations are linked. So I would say it's not not like you will become Ambani or Adani while working in civil services, but you won't have any kind of any shortage, and you as well as your dependents are well taken care of.
Well said. Well said. And the fact, I think that it's testimony, the fact that you, after your IIT, IIM, and American Express, you quit that world and came here. Obviously, then you obviously have a good quality of life. And same with Niharika. I mean, she was after her MS in the US, working in the US, coming back here and doing this. So, Niharika, do you want to talk to us about a little bit about that, the quality of life and so on?
Yes. The quality of life in the civil services, once we get through, is very good. The government really takes care of us. We are not in want of any material comforts. Depending on the city we are posted in most of the for IPS, for the Indian Police Services, and for the administrative services as well, we get housing, or in case in the capital cities housing is not available, we get house rent allowance, which depends from city to city. For example, Delhi and Bombay, cities with higher cost of living, will have higher house rent allowance compared to, say, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So that really takes care of our housing situation. And besides that, depending on the responsibility we have enough help at our home, in our offices, to take care of our needs as well as our dependents. So I think making a good living from the services is really is something that is completely taken care of by the government. So it's a good life.
Beautiful. And yeah, and you represent the elite services. So obviously the government has to take really good care of all your needs. So brilliant. Thank you very much. And I do know that the housing. So I lived in Delhi for a number of years, and I know the sorts of beautiful housing that is provided to senior officers in Delhi, and the same on Niharika, I suppose, with the IPS officers as well in really good parts of town, and so on. So great. So I have opened the chat window, and I'm going to hand over the mic to Suniti to start moderating the questions and answers, and I will now go quiet. So you're on
Yeah,
mute.
thanks. Yeah, thanks, Nitin. I'm going to ask Himanshu the first question. Himanshu, you talked about learning a foreign language. So, is that a need when you are in the foreign services to actually know a foreign language, or and do you belong to a certain group of countries where that is where you where a common language is spoken, and that is where you get posted, or is can you throw some more light on it?
Sure, sure. Let me break your question into two parts. So one is whether knowing a foreign language compulsory for entering into the Indian Foreign Service, and two, if there is a need to learn the language after getting into foreign service, and will your career be linked to that language? So to answer your first question, it is not required to learn a language prior to entering the Indian Foreign Service. But once you are inducted into the service, as a part of training, you have to learn a foreign language. So this language is allotted to you towards the end of your training in Wasuri. So we have a common training with different services, and so typically it is allotted. The language is allotted to us the moment we enter into a specific training for the Indian Foreign Service. So this allocation of language is dependent on your rank and your preference. So once that language is allotted to you, then you proceed to that country and finish your language training there. For example, I was allotted Myanmar. So the language, we call it Myanmar or Burmese. So I proceeded to Yangon for my language training. I spent 2 years there learning the language. So now they call me as a Burmese speaker within our system. So there would be Burmese speakers, Chinese speakers, French speakers, but the career is not necessarily linked to the language which you learn. For example, Burmese is just spoken in Burmese in Myanmar.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I have to spend my entire life in Myanmar. I'll be, of course, posted to different countries, but usually the first posting after the language training is either at the station where you are learning the language, which in my case would be Yangon, or in a division in Delhi which takes care of that area. So I right now I'm working in the Bangladesh Myanmar division, specifically looking at our relations with Myanmar. So someone who has done Chinese language would most likely be posted somewhere in China or would be manning the East Asia division in Ministry of External Affairs, which looks after our relations with China.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we have to be there always in China or in the East. We can be posted to US, Europe, or to Myanmar also.
Okay. Thanks, Himanshu. Okay, getting back to the students' questions. In general, this is from Ahana. In general, can we say that IFS is connected to being a representative of India in places like the United Nations and so on?
Yes, of course. So our representative at the United Nations body, they are mostly derived from the Indian Foreign Service cadre. Having said that, there are certain specific posts in UN in which people from other services, for example, Indian Administrative Services and Indian Revenue Services, they are also posted. So these may be something like the International Labour Organization. So this is a UN linked body, but it would require someone who has a specialization in labor relations. For example, an IS officer who is working in the Ministry of Labor, he might be asked to man that position as India's representative. But mostly UN representations of India, they are derived from the Indian Foreign Service cadre.
Okay. Okay, the next question is from Apurav. What is a safe ranking in UPSC examination to enter in administrative services?
In UPSC for administrative services, the ranking, it depends on the number of seats available in that year. So I can say for the 2015 batch, there were 180 seats. So you have to be in the top 100, around the top 100 students to land the Indian Administrative Services for the general category candidate. Then depending on the reservation, the ranking criteria for other categories is slightly different. So it totally depends on the number of seats available that year.
Okay. Okay. Do you have to be an Indian citizen for either of the exams? So actually, there's only one exam for all, right? Yeah. Do you have to be an Indian citizen?
Yes, I believe so. So before when you apply for this exam, you have to also specify your domicile, like which state do you belong to. So in addition to being an Indian, that information is also sought. So yes, you have to be an Indian.
Okay. So you guys must be aware of the MUN programs in schools that are conducted in schools in the Model United Nations programs. So are these helpful if one has to pursue the civil services?
So to answer that question, MUN or for example any any other activity which is related to your personality development would be helpful. So MUN, so it's not like it has a separate weightage in the exam. Uh, no, it doesn't have. But you know, if you take part, if you have taken part in the MUN and you have got the chance to interact with others to articulate your views in a better way, that might obviously be helpful in you clearing the exam.
Okay. The next question is, what are the different types of careers in the civil services? I think it has been mentioned by, do you want to just quickly go over it? Let me see if we have the time. Yeah. What are the different civil services and options in the civil services?
Okay, so I will just go over it very quickly again. Around 25, 26 odd services recruit through the combined civil services entrance examination. There are the All India services, which are Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, and the Indian Forest Service. Then there are Group A services, Indian Foreign Service being one amongst them. Besides that, the various Indian Railway Services, Corporate Law Services, Audit Services, Indian Postal Services, they all recruit through this exam, around 15, 16 central services. And then we have the Group B services, which are the DANICs, Delhi, Andaman, Nicobar Islands Civil Services, DANIPS, which is the same, but for the police services, and Pondicherry Civil Services. So around 25. So you appear for this exam, which goes over a period of 1 year. And depending on your rank and your preference that you fill during the examination process, you get allocated one of these 25 services, 25, 26 services. I'm not sure the exact number now.
All right. The next question is, this seems to be more for Niharika. What kind of cases do you guys get, and do you get overwhelmed by them?
Okay, as an IPS officer, we have to supervise all sorts of cases. Any FIR, the first information report that comes to the police station, the cases get registered. It's not like I am doing investigation of all these cases. I supervise these cases. So as a district chief in my last district, I had 7 police stations under my jurisdiction, and all the cases that were registered under them, what cases are being registered, how the evidence is being collected, how the investigation is being done, I would supervise that, minutely go over it with my investigating officers. If anything needs to be done, I would guide them and ask them to get that done. So all sorts of cases, like simple cases from theft, if someone slapped someone or there has been a fight, from that till complex cases like crimes against body, for example, murders and assault, as well as financial crimes where there has been some fraud or some online scam has been done. As an IPS officer, you deal with the entire spectrum of cases as a supervisory officer.
All right. Thanks, Niharika, for that. What are the qualifications we need to become IPS? So I think we've gone through that before, but yeah.
Yeah, so basically you just need to have a bachelor's degree. It can be a BA, BSc, BCom, or BCA, whichever bachelor's degree you've done. And after that, you appear for the civil services exam. Once you get through the Indian Police Service, there's the National Police Academy in Hyderabad, where you undergo a year-long training, where you stay on the campus and they train you through all the different the theory subjects related to law and crime, as well as physical stuff, outdoor training. They take you through that. So that prepares you to become an IPS officer.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Kavya. My dad says that for getting an IFS, we need a very high rank within the top 25 to get IFS. So is there any tip to make it to the IFS?
I think partly that question was addressed by Niharika ma'am.
Yeah.
That it depends on the year in which you are appearing and the number of vacancies and the category that you are in. So this all depends on all these factors. And as far as pro tip, I would say the pro tip would be common for all the civil services exams, that you have to be committed, diligent, and be thorough with the preparation. So that's
All right. Okay. What is the maximum age for IAS examination, and what are the basic needs for it? What is the maximum age that one can take the exam? Yeah, anyone?
so I think in our year of exam, which was 2018, the maximum age was 32 years. But I am not aware if that has been brought down, but I think it's still 32. And basic qualification is undergraduation in any subject.
All right.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search and I found that it says 32. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So is it that we have to appear for a common examinations and then we will be appointed on the basis of a ranking? That's how it works. All right. Also, a follow-up question to the IFS question asked by me is that, do we get an advantage in the rank if we opt for a foreign language as a subject to the UPSC mains?
I think UPSC has a list of subjects which you can opt for appearing in the exam in, and I think foreign languages are not there. Niharika ma'am, you can correct me if I am wrong, but I think
Yeah, I think Himanshu is right. Foreign languages are not there. From what I vaguely remember from back when I filled the form in 2014, I think Nepali is the only kind of foreign language that is part of the syllabus. From which you can appear. Sorry, not part of the syllabus, but through which you can write the exam.
Okay. All right. Okay. How is the hierarchy determined in terms of the ranking obtained for selection and induction?
Okay, so when we are appearing for the exam, there's this document called DAF. It is detailed admission form that we have to fill, in which it's an online form and all the services are, you get a list of all the services and you have to rank the services as per your preference. So for example, Himanshu's first preference could be the foreign services, then maybe IS, then maybe IPS, then some other services. Similarly, my preference could be, say, IPS first, then foreign services, and then IAS, then railways. So we rank that, and depending on our rank, we get the services allocated. For example, if I'm ranked 1 and my first preference is the Indian administrative services, then I'll surely get Indian administrative services. So once all the seats in a particular service is filled, then they move to the next service. So that's how it gets done.
Okay. Okay, so Ria has this next question. Ma'am, for the IPS, is physical fitness important? And if yes, what should we do?
For IPS, yes, once you get into the training, they do put you through a physical regime wherein they make you run, do horse riding, swimming, and unarmed combat and everything. But I would say it is not a requirement per se. Once you get into the services, they groom you for the role. So before the services, if you are active, you like sports, you like doing outdoorsy things, if you are into it, it is really good. But if you don't, then that is not a criteria that will filter you out of being an IPS officer. The training academy is self-sufficient in grooming you further for it.
Okay. Is law a good background to get into the civil services?
Yes, law is definitely an optional that a lot of lawyers, we have batchmates. I'm sure Himanshu also has batchmates from law optional. So we have to choose an optional subject. So a lot of lawyers, they take the law subject and appear for the exams with law. and it is definitely a good subject to go with.
All right. Yeah, that's I think that's about it. We are done with our questions, and just a last question for Niharika.
Yeah.
Yeah, Niharika, this is uh, we have a lot of young girls here on our as part of our audience, and what would you like to tell them? I mean, being part of being part of a service which was a few years back male dominated, and today
Right.
you have a lot of women on there. Is there a message that you would like to share with them?
Yes, thank you. That's very kind of you that you are giving me a platform where I can speak to young girls about it. Uh, Earlier, yes, the number of women officers in the police services used to be really less. And there was this stigma attached to it that women won't be able to work in the police force, which is a male dominated field. But in the last few years, around 20% of our batches, they are women officers. And I really credit our seniors, women seniors who've been in the services in the 80s and the 90s, for they have really laid the groundwork for us. There's a lot of acceptability of women being in the services in the police force now, not just from our subordinate officers but also from our senior officers. And I have been in the services for some 7 odd years, and from my personal experience, I yet have to experience that discrimination, uh, uh, that would come to me for being a woman officer. So I have not faced it till now, and I feel that senior officers have really laid the groundwork. So the training academy grooms you for the role. You might feel that it's a field that is an alien field, and working in the police force as a woman is difficult. And I personally feel that once you wear the uniform, you stop being a girl, you kind of become the officer. And it actually makes you feel like a Superman at times. So it's really nice.
How beautiful.
Well, same for Himanshu. Himanshu, with IFS, you have do you have batchmates who are women, young women who go out and or go are posted all over the world, and how you must be having a lot of friends there. How do they cope with it? And um, uh, how, what was your how what was your interaction? What is your perspective about these women officers in the IFS?
Sure. So in fact, so if you look at the history of Indian foreign services.
Yeah, again, Himanshu, mic a little closer. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you look at the history of our services, the Indian foreign services, you would see that in its initial days, very few women officers actually joined the services.
Mm.
So there were many challenges for them. So how would a lady officer go and survive in a different country? And what if she gets married? She won't be able to stay with her family, and all. So these are concerns which are still there in today's world. But I must compliment the lady officers who have entered into the service of, and how well they are managing their personal life with their professional life. And in fact, two of my bosses right now, they are both lady officers, and they have young children, school going children, and they have responsibilities from their families, but still they are excellent officers, and they're second to none. So, and I actually feel very honored to work in their company. And so that said, I believe that now our society is changing slowly but steadily, and we are heading towards a time when there would be no discrimination whatsoever. I feel that even in our services, if you look at it today, there is not very apparent discrimination, but people do think about it, that it would be more challenging for a lady officer. And but I think it's up to us to make them more comfortable, and make the environment more suitable to also cater to the other half of the population, not just the male officer. And I think we are moving towards that slowly. So that's a very good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's one last question for Niharika. The question is from Eklavya. Niharika ma'am, what are state cadres?
Okay, the different states, they each represent a cadre. So for the Indian Administrative Services officers, the cadres are allocated by the department, the Ministry of Personnel, and for IPS officers for the Ministry of Home Affairs. So once we get into the services, we get allocated the cadre. For example, if an officer is given, say, Madhya Pradesh cadre, then for the rest of their careers, they will be working in Madhya Pradesh with the exception of maybe coming on central deputation to Delhi or working with some other agency, but the majority of their career will be spent in the cadre. I am from the Agmut cadre, AGMUT, which is Arunachal, Goa, Mizoram, and the Union Territories. So my cadre has Chandigarh, Daman, Diu, Pondicherry, Andaman, Lakshadweep, Ladakh, all these are different small union territories. So that's why I'm in Port Blair. So once you get allocated to your cadre, it stays with you till the end of your services.
So Niharika, you get to work in a lot of exotic places, huh?
Yeah.
Some of those I have not even visited so far.
Yeah, it is a beautiful cadre.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. I think, yeah, we are done with our questions, Nitin. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I apologize, Himanshu and Niharika. We've gotten a little bit over time. So you've been generous with your time from your busy schedule. So I really want to thank you very much. It's been, for me, I can tell you from my heart personally, it's been a pleasure speaking to the two of you. I'm an engineer myself. And so that is one, but more than that, to talk to people like you who for the next 25 30 years have the reins of this country in your hands in terms of making things better for our country. You're really doing high impact stuff. It's a really real pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for all of the tips and experiences you shared with our young audience. So I want to wish you, on the behalf of all our audience and on behalf of our company, Flashcardz and us, all the very best for your careers and the impact you have set out to create. So thank you and wish you all the very best.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Niharika. Thanks, Himanshu.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I will end the call now. And just so everyone knows, the recording of this session will be available. If you want to look at it, we sort of make it available on demand. So if you or any of your friends would like to look at it, write to us on through the same communication channel, and we'll send you the link. Okay. Bye now.